The purpose of this module is to learn how to do a spatial join. We've talked about other types of join where we join a table to a shape and make a single file out of it. What this time we're going to do is we're going to take a closed surface, a polygon, and count the number of items within that surface. And that will create a new layer also, and this is known as a spatial join, which is very important. Like if you have a lot of data points inside of a state boundary and you're looking at the entire United States, so you got a bunch of data points inside of a state boundary, that's important to be able to count the number of items within that boundary. Or if you have a bunch of students and you want to know how many students live in each census tract, an important way of doing it. Or for the case of the U.S. House of Representatives, every year we have to, every 10 years we have to determine the number of people that live within a census district so that we can figure out where should be the boundary lines for the House districts each year, because our Constitution requires that we have about equal representation in every congressional district. And so with the 2010 census, we determined how many people live in the United States and where they live, and we now need to be able to count the numbers that are within each boundary, and we need to change those boundary lines of the congressional districts because some areas will have gained population, some areas will have a lost population, even to the point that some states may lose a House seat and other states may gain House seats because we keep about the same number of representatives in Congress every year. So spatial joins are an important function, and we're going to show you how to do that. So right now you're looking at a blank ArcMap screen that I have here. I need to put some data on my map, and so I'm going to open ArcCatalog, or actually it's already running. I'm just going to bring it up, and I'm going to open the Kentucky geodatabase. So we wait for that to open. Okay, you can see that we have 3 different files in the geodatabase. We have a county boundary file, we have the state boundary, and we have the zip code boundary, what the 3 files are. I'm going to take the county boundary as my base layer. I'm going to click on it, and I'm just going to drag it over to my ArcMap and let go of it, and it should load. There we go. You can see it back behind my screen. The map in green. You can see the preview over here. And then I need some point data that I'm going to count inside these boundaries. And so I have the location of the schools in the state of Kentucky. That's this layer here called school shape. And I'm just going to drag that out of our catalog and let go of it. And it should plot the location of all the schools. While that's doing that, I'm also going to minimize my ArcCatalog window here. It tells me that they're in a different projection, and I think we're going to be okay, so I'm just going to say close to that. And there you can see all the schools within the state of Kentucky. So what I want to know is how many schools it is in each county. That's what I'm going to count. Count the number of schools which in each county. So we could change our symbolism and things. We could change the color of our background, but that really is not the role that I'm interested in right now. The role that I'm interested in right now is just counting the number of dots within each polygon. So you right-click on the layer and go to Joins and Relates and click on Join. Remember, there's 2 types of joins. There's tabular joins and spatial joins, and we want to do a spatial join. So I'm going to use the pull-down arrow here, and there's my spatial join. I'm going to click on that. And notice that the window changed. It's not the same window we saw with the tabular join. That was the default selection. Depends on what you did last is usually what appears in that window, but the actual default is the tabular join. So you may have to go back and change that. You can see under number 1, it's got schools selected as what we're going to join with. The reason that it comes in there is it was the only point layer file that I had. If I had multiple point layer files, then I might have to use the pull down here and I'd see more than one point layer file. If I had not loaded the point layer file in before I started, I would have to use the file folder and go find where that point layer file is using an ARC catalog type function. But since I already loaded it on my map before we started, I don't have to do that. And since there's only one point layer file there, it's the only one selected. That's why we see that selected from the default. What we want to do is a summation. So you click on the summation checkbox. There's obviously other checkboxes you could click on, but for our case, we're only going to worry about the summation one. And finally, we need to tell where is it going to store this information, because we need to know where that's going to be stored at. And so we're going to use the file folder and tell it where to store the information. I'm inside a GIS folder on my local computer, which is probably an appropriate place for me to store this, especially since this is just a bunch of test information that I'm going to dispose of later. You need to make sure you store this new layer that's going to be created in the appropriate location. So I'm going to create a new file folder, and I'm going to call that file folder Video Lesson, just so I know what it is. So I created that file folder. There's Video Lesson. I'm going to open up that file folder, and there's nothing inside of it since I just created it. What am I going to call this? And we do not want to put spaces in its name if we can help it. So let's say this is KY underscore schools underscore count. So we know what it is. Make sure you make the names of your folders and files descriptive so you know what they are later. So I'm going to click Save. I've got now locations in my GIS folder under Documents called Video Lessons. I'm going to say OK. And this is going to create a new layer for us. So it's doing the spatial join. The more data points you have, the longer it's going to take. The slower your computer is, the longer it's going to take to do the spatial join. So what it's doing is taking every one of those dots in the point file and says, what polygon is that dot contained within? And then it's going to create a new column called count, which it's going to count the number of points in each polygon. So there's 120 counties in Kentucky. We'll have each county having a count of how many schools are within that county's boundaries. You can see it's getting close to being done there. When it gets done, it creates a new shapefile for us. And there we should have a new shapefile called KY underscore schools underscore count. But it's just purple. It didn't do anything, it doesn't seem like. It looks like just like the map we had before. Well, we have to go into the Properties window into Symbology and actually display the appropriate attribute. So I'm going to double click on KY schools count. To open up the Properties window, I'm going to go to the Symbology tab. I'm going to go to Quantities, and I'm going to choose a value here. And the value I want is called count. You can see it chose 5 classes for me and goes everywhere from 0 to 13. For the lowest level, 93 to 276 for the highest level. So just for some fun, we're going to make it 10 classes instead of just 5 classes. And we're going to say OK. And now we have our state of Kentucky displayed. The brightest, darkest red color is that there's 0 to 5 high schools, middle schools, elementary schools in that county. The brightest green means there's 93 to 276 schools. We can change the order of our layers a little bit and put schools, those dots on top, and then we can actually see where those schools are located, and as well as seeing the number below. We can also, if we want to, we'll turn off the school dots, double click on it, go back to our Properties window. I rushed that a little bit. I should have, there we go. Go to Labels. I'm going to say Label the feature, and what the feature I want to label is I want to know the count, actually the numerical value for each one of those. And black is fine as a color. Let's make the font a little bit bigger so we can see it. Let's say 12, which is probably a little bit of overkill, but we'll use a 12 here and say OK. And now you can see the number of schools contained within each one of those counties. So what we have done is a spatial join. We've taken dots and counted the number of dots within a polygon and created a new shapefile which displays that information.